Hey everyone, welcome to Pencil versus Pixel. I'm Caesar, your host for the show, and I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. He is the man behind the studio Signalnoise. Please welcome Mr. James White. Hey James, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going great. It is going
Good.
great.
Things are nice down there in sunny LA. You show off.
Yeah. So I take it it's you're pretty deep inside the snow up there, aren't you?
We got nailed with snow over the weekend, and I really hope that the wind doesn't disrupt the audio quality because it's beating against my window right now like crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, there's like a snowstorm happening. Canada.
James is a designer, an illustrator, and a speaker. He focuses on pop culture by creating work that complement things like his favorite movies or even toys. He's worked with companies like Wired Magazine, MTV, Universal Pictures, VH1, Adobe, and many, many, many more. Before we dive in, James, I'm going to ask you, pencil or pixel?
Oh, man. One leads to the other in my world. See, like I never stop drawing. Like I always have a sketchbook that's like at arm's length. So I'm always drawing. Every project I do starts with the pencil, but most of my projects finish with the pixel. So it's a very convoluted process, but I use them both. I'd like to say equally, but sketchbook is just more portable, so it's easier to sketch when I'm at an airport as opposed to hauling out my big rig. So it's both.
I could picture you with a Cintiq at the airport, drawing something up.
Oh man,
like a tablet.
I wish I had a Cintiq. Look at this, man. I got a hunk of crap like Wacom bamboo. This thing is like 3 years old.
Hey man, those things are pretty good.
They are, man. They're cheap.
There you go. It does the
I'm
job.
Good.
So James, let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about before your career. What influenced you and what got you into design and illustration? What's your story?
Oh man. I started drawing when I was 4 years old. So like pretty much right when I picked up a pencil, I started drawing. And it's been ever since then, it's just something that it's been a lifelong thing. When I was a kid, I would draw like my favorite cartoon character off of cereal boxes and comic books and that kind of thing. And most kids, like going through elementary school, kids do art and that kind of thing. And it's around junior high that, it's not cool to draw because, you should be playing goddamn basketball or whatever. So kids kind of lose interest in it and that kind of thing. And that's where people lose their creative way, I guess. But for me, that was always my thing. It never stopped with junior high. So all the way through. And then when you get to high school, I became like, I was the one art kid in grade 11 or 12 or whatever. So like working with the school newspaper, doing caricatures of the teachers, very unflattering, which was hilarious. But after that, like, I never thought, like, growing up and drawing all this time, like, I never thought it would evolve into a career. The weirdest decision. But I ended up getting a brochure from my guidance counselor, thing called graphic design. I didn't even know what a logo was. I had no idea in grade 12. So went to a local community college, got schooled up about 2 years worth of education, $7,000 worth of education. That's all I got. And ended up getting into the web design industry in 1998. And but here's the thing, like after that, even during like agency life or whatever, I never stopped drawing on my own time. I never stopped like kind of experimenting with Photoshop and Illustrator and like embracing these new tools to essentially like keep my drawings, like add new life to my drawings kind of thing and see where I could bring it. So that's essentially where it all started.
Nice. And so
I'm still that kid. Yeah.
Very cool. Did you start, so then that led to work in illustration and design, right? So did you start by creating work on your own or working as a freelancer? Or did you start working at a company, maybe an agency? How did that all go about?
Yeah, like the company that I ended up working for is a website design company. That's what I got hired to do because in it was 98, and I happened to learn a little bit of Flash when I was in school, and that's when Gabo Core launched online. So every friggin' company wanted that with that Flash website for theirs. So the company that hired me wanted to hire me they wanted to hire me out of school, so I would ditch the second year and then go work. But I ended up staying in school and then went to work for them. So I didn't have any freelance experience at all. I just went right into the agency and started designing websites. And I actually designed websites full time for like 10 years. after that. You know, like Signal Noise only became a freelance entity in like 2010, so it's still relatively new. So I worked with an agency that whole time by day, but by night still doing my own stuff, like keeping up Signal Noise, which started at just my it just started as my domain name at the time. But yeah, working on stuff during the day and then staying up till 3 in the morning, like working on my own stuff. Like I look at it as very much like I could be Clark Kent during the day at the Daily Planet and then be Superman at night, you know, when I'm doing my stuff. So
Nice.
kind of how I see it. Yeah.
What was it that inspired you to do your own thing on the side? What was it that was there? Was there a sort of an end goal with that already from the very beginning, or is it something that just evolved over time?
Yeah, it totally evolved over time. Yeah, it was never something that you know, my personal projects, I guess they were fueled by well, just by fun, number one, because I'm always drawing. Like it was always fun. I'm still that little kid, right? But it was fueled by in the early 2000s seeing guys like Joshua Davis and True is True, Mike China's website, and seeing these guys doing their own work on the that leading to them establishing their creative vision and their creative voice and doing that work for clients. And that's ultimately like the loose goal. It's like that's where I wanted to be at some point. But, you know, when you're a 23-year-old stupid ass, you have no idea how to how to get there. So it's just luckily like I didn't let that frustration of not knowing stop me at all. It was perseverance and just trying to like machine gun out work as hard as I could, whether that was drawing character illustrations, children's book drawing. I tried my own comics at one point. It was just pretty much anything. Design my own toy line. I wanted to do a video game at one point, you know, and it was just all these different projects trying to figure out what did I want to do with this, but all the while building my skills and just having fun.
Would you say that your early work started attracting people and maybe bringing other outside clients in?
Oh, I hear your dog.
Can you hear my dogs?
No, that early work, no, not at all. Like, the early work was just for me. Like, I used it to populate my Signalnoise website, which at that point was just a list. It was just a list of links. You click on a link and you get a drawing or whatever it is. So that early work that I did in my 20s, like I'm 36 right now. That work that I did in my 20s was just for me. Like nobody really saw it. It was all online. I was updating my Flickr and all this other stuff, but nobody really saw it. It didn't attract any clients. It was funny, like the agencies that I would work with. I'd be doing like, you know, corporate stuff during the day, corporate websites for real estate companies and that kind of thing. Not really exciting artwork. And then they'd see what I'm doing on my own time and going like, where is this stuff coming from, dude? And I remember one of my first bosses just going, shaking his head and walking away. And he's just like, you're going to be famous someday. I was like, what? I don't know. It was great. Like my buddy Malcolm said that. It was hilarious. But it's interesting, you know, like I never really did it for anything. I just did it for myself. And I think, you know, thinking back on it loosely, I think it was kind of that pursuit of trying to find my niche, you know, my little corner of the internet that I could populate with my own stuff. And I think that's what fueled it ultimately. And yeah, it's crazy. I never even knew how much I was drawing back then until 2 days ago. I was rooting through my old sketchbooks and man, just going through, I can remember drawing every one of them, but I had forgotten that they were there.
Yeah.
So I'm looking through it and I'm going, God, I did a lot of work back then. It's insane, you know?
Wow. You had them stored in your memory, but they were kind of blocked off, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure, man. It's like every project that I did, I would, you know, I spent a lot of time at, this sentence will start out terribly. I spent a lot of time at bars by myself. But you know, I went to like my favorite watering hole and just brought my sketchbook, and that would be a Friday night for me in my early 20s. I'd just go there and I'd have a couple of drinks, just sitting at the table by myself drawing, and I would draw like 10 pictures that night, exploring projects and characters and whatever else, you know. And that portion of my personality never really stopped. You know, it's just something I've always wanted to do.
So how long would you say that it would take someone that works you know, really hard on their craft, whether it be for something that they'd like to do as a career or just for fun? You know, obviously you said you started in your early 20s, right? Do you sort of give credit to those early days of working really hard and just, you know, I don't know if I'm making myself clear. I'm just
No, you're absolutely right. It's sort of weird. Like the stuff that I'm doing now, the little art prints that I'm doing of characters and things, it does very much play into like even back when I was a kid, you know, like I always wanted to create my own little worlds full of my own little characters. And that simple little idea kind of evolved over time. Like I drew a lot of wrestlers when I was a kid, and I started my own little federation. Me and my buddy Mike, we'd roll dice and we draw our characters and name them, where they're from and their weight, and we'd roll dice because that makes them fight, and whoever got the higher dice roll wins. We had champions, and it was crazy.
Awesome.
Like we were those kids, right? But that idea of creating. I still have the scribbler full of my wrestlers, by the way. It's amazing.
Nice.
Maybe
you post it up at some point, right?
What's that?
I said maybe if you post it up on your website at some point, that'd be cool.
Oh yeah, I'm recreating all those little bastards, man. All right, it's great. So, but that little idea of having my own little thing that didn't hinge on anything else, it's my own little creation. That's always been kind of my ultimate goal, whatever that project may be, and that never really stopped. That keeps fueling and stuff, and I think I'm always trying to find a way to kind of make my own little thing. And Signalnoise as an entity, as a brand, has become my own little thing, sure. But within that, like, I like to have, like, what's the product of it? Like, it's one thing to have a logo, to be known as doing design, and to work with big clients that you can slap a bunch of their logos on your website or whatever. That's one thing. But it's like, what's my own little thing that I can craft and grow and populate and that kind of thing. And that's sort of where these little series of art prints kind of evolved into.
Very cool. Yeah. Now, you talked a little bit about your personal projects earlier. That tell us about the importance of making personal projects. Do you recommend that a lot of designers I'm going to generalize this, but creatives out there that do you recommend that they do their own personal projects? And what's your take on that?
Yeah, definitely. And the personal projects, like, and I can only speak from personal experience, but the personal projects that I did is ultimately what ended up building the Signalnoise brand for me. That's how I got to the point where the scales tipped. Like, here's the scenario. I was working like 9 to 5 at an agency, and I'm working on websites for the local spas and gas stations or whatever the hell I was doing. And then I'd go home and I'd be working for MTV and VH1 and Universal and all this. And it got to a point where I was like, what am I doing? I'm just gonna, like, I'm earning way more money on my own time than I was at the agency, or it was roughly the same or whatever it was.
Right.
But those people, like MTV and VH1, those people called me directly as a result of the personal projects that I was doing. Like, they're not going to look at the website I designed for the gas station and go, hey, let's get him to work on our new corporate IDs. Like, how would that ever happen? So, like, the reason I endorse personal projects so much is because of that exact reason. That's when you can be a rocker. That's when you do the stuff you really, really, really want to do, and you're not hindered by boundaries or whatever that's put on you by a creative director or a client or whatever. And I'm not saying those boundaries are a bad thing. It's just a different form, right? So when you're doing stuff on your own time, that's when you can really blast it out, man, and do the stuff you really want to do. And that's what's going to attract people eventually, with a little bit of luck and a little bit of perseverance, attract those clients you want to work with and say, hey, that cool, like, fake CD cover you did for Black Sabbath or whoever, like, can you do that sort of thing for our Motorola ad or whatever the hell it is, that sort of thing. That's the architecture that is the backbone of Signalnoise, really. That's
so awesome, man. Like, yeah, I totally agree. It reminds me of what Seth Godin. You're familiar with Seth Godin, right?
Oh yeah.
What he talks about a lot. He talks about choosing yourself. You've basically chosen yourself. You create these projects. No one told you or asked you to create these projects. But then what happens after that is those same people or those same companies that you created these personal fake projects for come knocking on your door, and they now want to work with you, right? So you hear about that all the time, and it's great. And I highly recommend it. Not that I have done a lot of personal projects myself, but it's something I'm really, really now going to dive a little bit deeper into, and I see the benefit in that. I see the benefit. You create your portfolio, you build it, you're doing the things you want, and then potentially, I'm not saying it always happens, but potentially, those same companies or people or whatever, come to you and wind up working together. I mean, that's like a dream opportunity that you create for yourself, which is great.
Exactly, and it doesn't come down to like like we said earlier, like luck and perseverance factor in there certainly, but it comes down to the decision to do it. It's if the worst thing, the thing that I really, really dislike hearing is people just complaining about their job. So they say like, oh, I don't like it. The clients are, and we hear it all the time, right?
Absolutely.
And then you say like, well, okay, well, what have you been doing on your own time? Well, Nothing really. When I get home, I'm just so tired. I don't want to get in front of the computer. And it's just like, okay, there's your issue, man. It's like you have to make the decision to chase this thing, man. It's like this is a lifestyle. If you're just looking for a job, then there are plenty of design jobs out there. If this is your life, if this is in your blood, you gotta love this stuff, man. It's like you gotta do it as hard as you can. It's a decision. It's not the dump truck full of money isn't just going to pull up by chance and somebody's like, hey, here's your dream client. It's like you got to chase that, man. You got to hustle it. So, yeah, how I feel about it.
In the early days, let's talk about the early days. How long,
Sure.
how many hours approximately would you spend, working on this stuff, after work? Yeah. How much time?
It was
after your day job. I'm sorry, after your day job, how much approximately
Yeah.
would you work on your personal projects?
Yeah, sure. I'll just talk about like the Signalnoise stuff, like early Signalnoise, like 2007 or whatever, like that. Back then, it's all on my website. If you go back to the early Signalnoise archives or whatever from 2007, 2008, and I was blasting out like 3 or 4 posters a week, like 18 by 24 fully realized posters, and for nothing really. I would just make up a word and just design a thing around it, and like it looked like an event poster. And that was one of the things that, like, sticking fake logos on it like it was for something. And the amount of time, like, I remember, like, I'd work 9 to 5, I'd go home and eat supper and then go right to the computer and work until 2 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I would do the same thing the next day. And all day when I'd be at the office working on client stuff, I'd be excited to get back home and do the exact same thing, because like I got that poster half done, man. It's looking rad. I got to get back and finish it, So it would go on and on like that. And there were like, sure, like hanging out with my friends kind of went down and playing video games went down, but it was a decision, and it was right at that time that I said, man, I got to do this. If I'm going to do it, now's the time. I think I just turned 30. That's enough messing around, man. Like, you have, there's nothing, if you don't achieve your goals because you don't chase it, you have nothing to complain about, So Absolutely. I need to do it.
A lot of people that are really prominent in the design community, would you say that they've also done the same thing? They worked their butts off, at least at the very beginning, to get where they are?
Oh, I would say almost certainly, man. Like everybody that I talk to, like actually I see the Scott Hansen poster that's right behind you there, the Tycho poster. Right. Yeah. And it's like, that's a guy. I was talking to him. Oh man, it was a number of years ago. I think it was like 2011. I was hanging out with Scott in Toronto actually, and he was talking about just that, about how, it's all on your own back. It's all based on your own steam. And I mean, he's reached new heights with his musical career, right? So, and that's at the time he said, that's where I want to aim is music, because that's my first love. So, and he does it. And, I was just talking to Chuck Anderson, No Pattern. It's the same thing. It's this, all the stuff you do on your own time that ends up dictating what you ultimately end up doing. All of these people, it's all perseverance. You look at somebody like Aaron Draplin. Draplin
absolutely
has he has more merch NASA and Nintendo combined, it's like, and it all has his logo on it, man. And he's killing it. It's all his stuff, and
he was, definitely. He was actually the first guest on Pencil vs. Pixel, and right after we got off the call, we were chatting for a little bit, but then he said, hey, I got to jump off because I'm working on this CD cover that I have to get out tomorrow, and then tomorrow I'm working on this, and then following day I'm working on, he just kept going and going and going, and then also, now that you brought Scott Hansen, I remember when I went to see him live at a show, right after the performance, he didn't take care of the of his gear or anything that was already taken care of, but he went to the merch booth and he decided he's going to sell these posters and everything else directly with the fans, along with the people that were working with him selling the stuff. So I mean, that just shows the work ethic that's involved, and that also creates I guess a little more value for the artist. So in this case, Scott Hansen, that my perception of his value, my perception of his value just went up completely.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you said like perception too, and that's something that's an interesting word, because when it comes to like designers and stuff, it's really easy to get a misconception when you look at somebody's portfolio or whatever. Like for example, I'll use Chuck as an example again, because I just talked to him, and this is a point. When I first saw his work, I went to his portfolio. This is right when I was starting to build Signalnoise as its own entity, and I looked at his No Pattern site and I was like, man, this guy got it together. like, look at this stuff, man. And I had that perception of him. It's just like, this guy got it locked down. And then I found out he was like 21 or some bull crap. It's like, how is this, but I mean, he's in the same trench that we all are. It's like, we're all just trying to figure it out. We're all trying to build our own little worlds kind of thing. And that's it. And it's easy to make a misconception of somebody. And, talking about it in this forum, or doing like the public speaking thing, is a good way for me to kind of break that wall for people and say, listen, just because I'm on a stage, or I'm on a podcast, it doesn't mean that I'm not trying to do the same things that everybody else is. It's the same. We're all in the same fight, and it's fun. And I think that should be like recognized, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. You're talking, now that you're talking about public speaking, it reminds me about your broadcast, the broadcast you have on your website. And you did do it for a while, right? Every Thursday. Tell me the importance of that. How did that help your brand? How did it help you, I guess, become more engaged with people out there that follow your work? And how did it just help you in general?
Oh man,
or did it, or does it?
Oh, it totally did. Oh yeah. I did it to help people out, to talk about process and that kind of thing. And it evolved into me talking about not the how to do it, but the why we do it. The philosophy behind being a creator, and how we do it, and how we perceive things, and that sort of thing. And as it went, like, there's a portion of the broadcast that's a Q&A period, so it's like question and answer. And the questions I was getting were like a lot of process-based stuff, and it was forcing me to kind of evaluate how I do stuff. So somebody would ask me, like, what was going through your head when you created this poster, blah, blah, blah. And I'd have to stop and think and go, what the hell was going through my head when I did that? So for me, there was a lot of value in doing the broadcast, in that it allowed me to reflect on where I've been and how I did it and why I did it, and stuff that I don't normally think about, because when you get to a point with Illustrator and Photoshop, or just creating in general, it becomes a lot of intuition. It's instinct. And I just built this thing. It's like, how did you build that? Like, well, how did I do that? So this forced me to kind of analyze a lot of that stuff. And that was the greatest benefit for me out of it, was kind of, and then trying to articulate that and translate it to mostly younger designers, like people trying to get their footing and that kind of thing, and into a rant that's like understandable and I don't know, engaging, I guess.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about maybe any pitfalls or any failure that you've experienced. Is there a particular moment that you could think of right now where you know that you failed at something? It's maybe a big deal. Can you talk to us about that and how you dealt with it? But also, what happened? How did you deal with it? And how did it sort of work out at the end?
Yeah, the biggest, it was actually really kind of recently. I spent a year dedicated to independent movie posters, like trying to do alternative art movie posters, like the Mondos and all those guys. I really wanted to tap into that scene, because I'm a huge movie geek and I love movie posters in general. Really wanted to do that. So I spent a year consciously investing a lot of time trying to get these posters out there, but becoming mired in like licensing and a lot of that kind of stuff. The suits that surround everything that allow you to not do anything. And that sucks, because if I'm doing a movie poster, I want to use the official logo. I want to have a credit block on there. I want to make it like for real, as close as I can to it anyway. And after a year, that's when I had to make the decision, or the realization, that like, this isn't working. I can't tap into this community. If you're an independent artist trying to break into movie posters, you need to be kind of tied to a bigger entity in order to do it. You need to be either with a big time agency that can land the licenses, that has capital to pay for these things, or you have to be roped with a Mondo who produces all these things a lot, and they have they can have access to the keys to the kingdom, it seems. But if you're not attached to those, you're just kind of out in the cold, and you can't get licensing people to return your calls, and you just can't get in there. The community isn't open to you. So I had to make the realization, like, okay, this didn't work. It sucks. I created some of the best work that I've done, and I had tons of fun doing it, but it didn't work. Financially, I was in a bind. I was pissed off, because I thought I could do this, and it turns out you couldn't. Sometimes you just need to pull the plug, right? So how I dealt with that, and how I deal with this stuff all the time, is when I'm bummed out, or I feel like I'm kind of a snake in the corner, I just create stuff. I start doing illustration. I do something completely different. I felt like I kind of lost footing with Signalnoise during that year, so I needed to reestablish myself or like reinvent myself. So I started doing a lot of the illustrations, and which led to the stuff I'm doing today. Like this was back in February. I decided I was going to do illustrations that were like vintage video game consoles. I started just every 12 hours, I was just blasting out a new thing. I designed them in a square because squares fit on in. I did that, and that's ultimately the backbone of it. Started doing these things, and then got a call from the Canon camera company to illustrate their cameras for a big campaign they were doing. Yeah,
That
so
is sweet.
it's like that led to that, and it's like okay, like I think I'm onto something, and that's what dictated the next year. And I'm having way more fun doing the kind of illustration that I'm doing now, the process that I'm experimenting with than I did during the movie poster years, and it feels like I'm getting somewhere with it. So that dictated, it's turning a negative into a positive. And I do that. I mean, the only way I can do that personally is just through making stuff, playing, finding joy in making, in creating, really.
Love it. Love it. That's great. That's a great one right there. Very
Cool.
cool. You were talking about speaking. What led to speaking? How did that start?
I started speaking at a very young age. Sorry.
You're not the first one, trust me.
Yeah, it's like other people
See,
speak.
that's why, like, I shouldn't generalize it. Like, how do you feel about talking?
I think some people do it way
being on
too.
the speaking circuit and all that.
People think I talk way too
I have
much.
to change that question up.
Yeah. But yeah, in terms of public speaking, yeah, like I started doing it actually. FITC in Toronto was the first. Sean Pucknell, buddy of mine, he was the first one to roll the dice on me and put me on a stage in front of people. And it was very much like at the time I watched a lot of TED Talks, like a lot of people do, and I became a really big kind of nerd in terms of like presentation style and telling a story and having like a beginning, a middle point, and an end point and a conclusion, and trying to give the audience like advice and something they can take home and that kind of thing, while at the same time, promoting what you do and talking about creativity and the nuts and bolts of it, right? So I wrote a narrative and laid out PowerPoint slides, practiced it like crazy at home. I'd rehearse the entire thing, make sure the timing was right and whatever, write my dumb jokes in there and all that stupid crap. And it was great. Like, the first time I was on stage, it went off amazing. I was very surprised by the whole thing. And I did that talk, and then it started just snowballing after that. So I got contacted by a lot of other conferences and that kind of thing. Because I think conferences watch what are going on at other conferences in terms of who's speaking. So if a new name pops up, they're like, "Oh, is that guy? Let's get him over here and see what he can do." So yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And it's like probably the most job now is like actually traveling around and actually like meeting other people in other cities, other creatives, and seeing where they're at and seeing where their city's at, and trying to give out half-wit advice on stage. It's fun that way. Yeah, that's pretty much how it started, though. Yeah.
Has that sparked any other opportunities? Speaking outside of speaking. Has it started maybe other ventures or other work?
I don't know so much that work has come from it. Some nice collaborations have come.
Okay.
And potential collaborations too. I mean, the biggest thing about traveling for me is just to meet other creative people and to meet other speakers. I mean, I've met like in the last couple of years, like I've met people that I would just like pee my pants that I'd met if like a total fanboy moments, right? And it was like, holy crap, like Joshua Davis and Scott Hansen and, Chuck and all these people. And I'm like, holy crap, man, because I've been following their work for so long.
Exactly.
Man, and I'm still like I'm a fan of design. I'm not just a designer, man. Like I love this stuff. And it's crazy to meet these people and hang out with them and then like kind of pick their brain on stuff and then steal their ideas. Never do that. But,
there you go,
yeah,
man.
And it's great. Yeah. And like even one of the greatest things, like I'll use my friend Kat Gaskin from Toronto, for example. Like whenever I'm there, like she's at the point in her career where she's starting to experiment with different styles and finding her own voice, and it's a beautiful thing to watch, So sitting down with people face to face and having these conversations about where they are and where they want to be and what they want to achieve, and like, that's personal stuff, not just what clients have you worked with? You know, like what computer do you use? Like it's the deeper like undercurrent of creativity, and that's what I love about traveling and just meeting people and talking about that stuff. You know?
That's so awesome. And you learn a lot. You learn a lot from these people.
Oh
You
yeah.
learn, yeah.
Well, it's great. Yeah, you do learn a lot about, other people and stuff and yourself, because that makes me reflect on, where I was 10 years ago and like, how did I deal with that? Like, she's dealing with it this way, but how did I deal with that? Like, I'm a moron, so she's probably doing it really smarter than me. I could learn a lot from that. So it's true. So, yeah.
Super cool, man. Hey, so before I wrap it up, just wanted to ask you what exciting stuff are you working on right now? What's coming up? Any speaking engagements? Any new work or anything you could talk about?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stuff I can't talk about yet, but it's going to be out in the next couple of months. But like right now, I'm still working on the Starcade series, the series of prints, character-based stuff. A lot of wrestlers. I like illustrating wrestlers. I have them here, like here. I don't know if this is going to show up at all.
Nice.
That's the He-Man print kind of thing. So that's what I'm talking about.
That is awesome.
It's your whole thing. But yeah, a lot of that stuff because that was such a success last year that I got approached by a number of art shows, which is great. So there's 2 galleries in New York, and there's 1 local gallery that I'm supplying Starcade series to for those shows. And I was approached to do I can't. Oh, I wish I could talk about this. I can't yet. But I was approached to do a poster for a very notable toy line that I had when I was a kid. So that's going to come out like in March. Yeah.
Well, can you tell us as much? Is it a toy line that's already out, or is it something that's going to reemerge from like years and years ago of being buried?
It's reemerging. Yeah.
All right, this is gonna be exciting.
So it's something that's like it's a toy line that they got the license to do. It's not going to be hinging on a movie or a new cartoon or anything like that, but it's a toy line that I had when I was a kid. So, to do an official poster for this toy line that like I used to draw these things when I was a kid, it's crazy to think. Yeah, so that's one of the things that I'm working on now. Traveling, yeah, like I already have dates. A lot of these aren't announced, but I'm gonna blow the whistle anyway. I'm going to Jacksonville, Florida. That's in like April. I'm traveling to Toronto. I'm going to the UK. There's something in Scotland that's going on that I'm going to, and back to I think South Carolina, Columbia. Going back down there. So, and those are only the kind of confirmed dates or whatever.
Awesome. So, yeah. And you're always taking speaking gigs, right? Like.
Oh yeah. Like anything that's going on, really. Like I got to make sure I'm in the clear, and I need time here because last year, oh man, I did 20 speaking engagements, and it was in Europe, it was in Manila, it was all over the States. It was crazy, and I was pretty haggard by the end of the year. Like when you're living like in 2-week chunks. And you're still trying to do your dumb prints, like it's really challenging to try to get a normal schedule. So this year I don't think I'm going to be doing as many speaking gigs, but I'm still totally open to hear like what people have going on and what they'd like to invite me to. So yeah,
very cool, man. So everyone, you could find everything you talked about here and links to the things that we talked about here with James White on pencilversuspixel.com/James White. That's pencilvspixel.com/James White. Before we conclude our chat here, James, is there one last piece of advice that you would give the aspiring designer or someone that maybe wants to take the leap on their own and start freelancing? What would that be?
It would be never stop. Like never stop and don't make excuses. It's just you got to see it through. Nobody's gonna hand you your own goals. So you gotta persevere and you got to do that work and you got to do a lot of it to kind of make your skill set meet your personal taste, and then you can get down to business.
Wow, James, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time on being in Pencil vs. Pixel. Thank you for all of your advice. I mean, it's been incredible.
Yeah.
We hope to catch you soon. Thanks a lot.
Hey,
bye, guys.
Appreciate it, man.